The Harborview Hotel stood proudly against the Providence skyline, its renovated brick facade gleaming with the promise of luxury and discretion. Room 712 was nestled in the corner of the 7th floor, where the old textile mill's original timber beams met modern steel and glass. Dante, the ghost, Esposito checked his watch as he stepped out of the elevator. 9:47 p.m. He was early, as always. In his former line of work, being late had consequences that didn't bear thinking about. 3 years of trying to live clean hadn't broken the habit. His footsteps were nearly silent on the plush carpet as he moved down the hallway, his tailored charcoal suit concealing both his athletic frame and the 9mm Beretta nestled against his ribs. This was supposed to be simple. Meet Julian Kaine's representative, hand over the payment for the waterfront property, get the paperwork signed. No blood, no bodies, no complications. The kind of errand Don Ricci sent him on now that he refused to do the work that had once made him infamous. Just business, Dante muttered to himself, rapping his knuckles against the hotel room door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Dante's instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through 20 years in this life, began to whisper. Something was wrong. He reached inside his jacket, fingers brushing the cool metal of his pistol as he tried the handle. Unlocked. Another bad sign. The door swung open silently, revealing a luxurious suite bathed in the amber glow of a single table lamp. The room smelled of expensive cologne, copper, and fear. A half-empty bottle of Macallan sat on the coffee table beside an empty glass, a lipstick smudge on its rim. "Hello?" Dante called, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I'm here for the deal with Mr. Kane." A muffled sound came from the bedroom. Soft, pained, desperate. Dante drew his weapon in one fluid motion, years of training taking over. He moved toward the bedroom, each step calculated and silent. The door was partially open, revealing darkness beyond. With his left hand, he pushed it wider, keeping his gun trained on the shadows. What he saw made even his hardened heart stutter. A woman was tied to a chair in the center of the room. Duct tape covered her mouth, but her eyes, one swollen, both blazing with defiance, locked onto his immediately. Her short blonde hair was matted with blood on one side. Her clothes, what remained of them, suggested professional attire now torn and soiled. Bruises in various stages of healing covered her exposed skin. A military tattoo on her shoulder caught his attention. Marine Force Recon. But it was the chains that turned Dante's cold blood to ice. Heavy, industrial chains wrapped around her torso, securing her to the chair, which was itself bolted to the floor. This wasn't an impulsive act of violence. This was calculated, prepared. Someone had turned this hotel room into a prison cell. On the bed lay an array of surgical tools, scalpels, forceps, bone saws, arranged with meticulous precision on a sterilized cloth. Dante holstered his weapon and approached slowly. The woman watched his every move, her eyes never showing fear, only calculation. She was assessing him, just as he was assessing the situation. "I'm going to take the tape off," Dante said quietly. "Don't scream. It won't help either of us." When he pulled the tape away, she didn't make a sound, just worked her jaw back and forth, wincing slightly. "You're not one of them," she said. It wasn't a question. "No. I'm here about a property deal." Dante examined the chains. Heavy padlocks secured them at strategic points. "Who did this to you?" "Julian Kane." Her voice was raw but steady. "The man you came to meet." The name hung in the air between them. Dante had heard rumors about Kine. The surgeon, they called him. A man who enjoyed his work too much. But this? Why? Dante asked, already pulling out his phone. "Because I know what he really does with that waterfront property you're here to help him buy." Her eyes bored into his. "He's not running nightclubs or gambling. It's organ trafficking." I found his records. Detailed logs of people who disappeared, and which parts of them were sold to which buyers. Dante froze. The waterfront property, the one Don Ricci had sent him to help acquire, was going to be a processing facility for human beings. And Ricci either knew and didn't care, or was being played. "You have about 5 minutes before his men return," she continued. "They went to get food. I heard them talking." Dante made his decision in an instant. "What's your name?" "Cassidy Reynolds. Friends call me Cass." "I'm Dante." "Hold still." He pulled out a lockpick set from his inner pocket. Some habits die harder than others. As he worked on the locks, she spoke again, her voice a harsh whisper. "If you help me, you'll be a dead man. Kine has connections everywhere. Police, City Hall, even the feds. The first lock clicked open. "I've been a dead man walking for years," Dante replied. "What's your plan if I get you out of here?" "Run, hide, then destroy him." The second lock gave way. "Ambitious. Any idea how?" "I had evidence on my phone. They took it, but I backed everything up. The account information is in my head." The chains began to loosen. The final lock was the most complex. Dante worked it with practiced fingers. "You don't seem surprised that I'm helping you." Cassidy's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "I'm a good judge of character. Even when it comes to mob enforcers, you don't have the eyes of someone who'd leave a woman chained to a chair." The lock clicked open, and the chains fell away. Cassidy stood shakily, massaging her wrists. "Can you walk?" Dante asked, glancing toward the door. "I can run if I have to." She moved to the window, peering out. 7 floors up. Fire escape? Dante checked his watch again. 3 minutes, if we're lucky. Service elevator at the end of the hall. It leads to the kitchen. They moved to the door, and Dante paused, his hand on the knob. Everything in his life was about to change. Again. All because of what was chained in a hotel room. "Ready?" he asked. Cassidy nodded, her eyes now burning with something beyond defiance. "Purpose. Let's go." 3 days earlier, Dante, the ghost Esposito, sat alone at the corner table of Ricci's bakery, a cup of espresso cooling before him. At 42, his dark hair showed threads of silver at the temples, and fine lines framed eyes that had seen too much. His hands, steady and strong, bore the small scars of a violent past. But it was the larger scar, the one that ran from his sternum to his navel, that had changed the course of his life. The bakery, nestled in the heart of Providence's Fox Point district, served as neutral ground for the city's warring families. Old men played cards and argued politics while housewives gossiped over cannoli. No one paid attention to the quiet man in the corner, and that's exactly how Dante preferred it. "You're brooding again," said a voice, breaking his reverie. Dante looked up to see his sister, Gabriella, sliding into the chair across from him. At 38, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who had fought for everything she had. The restaurant she ran 3 blocks away had become a Providence institution, despite, or perhaps because of, its connections to the Ricci family. "Just thinking," Dante replied, pushing his untouched espresso aside. "Dangerous habit." Gabriella's eyes, the same deep brown as his own, studied him carefully. "Salvatore's been asking for you." Dante tensed at the mention of Don Ricci. "How bad is he today?" "Clearer than yesterday. He remembered my name." She hesitated. "He thinks it's 2005 again. Keeps talking about that job in Miami." Miami. The job that had earned Dante his nickname. 3 targets, no witnesses, and not a single trace left behind. The ghost who could make problems disappear. It had been his first major assignment for the family, the one that set him on his path. "I'll stop by," Dante said finally, "but I'm not taking any more jobs like that, not even for him." Gabriella nodded, relief visible in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. "He respects that. Says you've earned your retirement, but he still wants you around for the legitimate business." Legitimate. The word almost made Dante laugh. In Providence, the line between legitimate and criminal blurred more with each passing day. The city's revitalization had opened new avenues for profit: real estate, tech investments, waterfront development. The old families had adapted, washing blood money clean through business ventures that looked respectable on paper. "What does he need?" Dante asked. "There's a property deal. The old Harborside warehouse on the waterfront. Salvatore wants to invest, but Julian Kane is also interested. They're trying to work out a partnership instead of a war." She lowered her voice. "Kane says he wants to turn it into an exclusive club and medical spa for his high-end clients." The name sent a chill through Dante. Julian, the surgeon, Kane, former trauma surgeon with hands that could save lives or take them with equal precision. The man who had put Dante back together after a job went sideways 5 years ago. The man who had, in a fever dream confession, told Dante how beautiful he found the human body when opened up beneath his scalpel. "I don't trust Kane," Dante said flatly. "Neither does Salvatore. That's why he wants you to handle the transaction. Says you'll smell a trap if there is one." Gabriella reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Just a business meeting. No blood, promise me." Dante had made a vow 3 years ago, after his last job. The target had been a father of 3, a man whose only crime was witnessing something he shouldn't have. Dante had followed him for days, learning his routines, watching him play with his children in the park. When the moment came, standing behind the man in his own kitchen while his family slept upstairs, Dante couldn't pull the trigger. He'd walked away that night, returned to Salvatore, and laid his gun on the old man's desk. "I'm done with killing," he had said. To his surprise, Don Ricci had nodded slowly, those wise eyes understanding something even Dante himself didn't fully grasp. "Then you'll do other things for me," the Don had replied. And so began Dante's second life within the family, handling negotiations, managing investments, becoming the face of Ricci's legitimate enterprises. "Just business," Dante assured his sister now, though doubt gnawed at him. "I'll talk to Salvatore this afternoon." 2 hours later, Dante sat in the sunroom of Don Salvatore Ricci's colonial-style home overlooking Narragansett Bay. The old man, as everyone called him now, sat wrapped in a cashmere blanket despite the room's warmth. At 82, Salvatore Ricci's once imposing frame had shrunk, but his eyes, when lucidity visited him, remained sharp as ever. "Dante, my boy," Salvatore said, his voice stronger than Dante had expected. "You look troubled." "Just cautious, Don Ricci," Dante replied, taking the seat across from the old man. "Ella mentioned a deal with Julian Kane." The Don's face darkened momentarily. "Necessary business. The Santoro family backs him. If we oppose the club, they'll take it as an insult. Better to partner and keep our friends close, our enemies closer." He leaned forward. "But I need eyes I trust. You see things others miss." "What exactly am I looking for?" Dante asked. Salvatore's gaze drifted toward the bay, where fishing boats bob gently in the afternoon sun. "Things don't add up. Kane's medical business is too profitable for legitimate work. Too many powerful clients flying in from overseas for specialized treatments. Too many people disappearing after they check into his private facility in Newport." A cold weight settled in Dante's stomach. "You think he's running something illegal through the medical business?" "I know he is. But I need proof before I can move against him." Salvatore's hand trembled slightly as he reached for a folder on the table beside him. "Friday night. The Harborview Hotel. You'll meet his representative. Pretend to complete the partnership agreement, but keep your eyes open." "Something's wrong, Dante. I can feel it in these old bones." Dante took the folder, leafing through property documents and financial statements. "If I find something, what then?" The old Don's eyes cleared completely, and for a moment, Dante saw the man who had ruled Providence's underworld with an iron fist for 4 decades. "Then we do what must be done. Without mercy." As Dante left the house, his phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Room 712, Friday, 10 p.m. Come alone. J.K. Kaine himself, not a representative." The cold weight in Dante's stomach hardened into ice. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Dante reviewed everything he could find on Julian Kane: his medical career at Johns Hopkins, his abrupt departure after accusations of unethical research, his rise through the Santoro organization, until he commanded his own corner of their empire. Photographs showed a handsome man in his 50s with silver hair and the precise movements of a surgeon, always impeccably dressed, always smiling with teeth but never with eyes. By Friday evening, as Dante adjusted his tie in the mirror of his waterfront apartment, he couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was more than just business. He slid his Beretta into its holster, an old habit he couldn't break, even for a simple property deal. "Just business," he told his reflection, not believing it for a second. The sun was setting over Providence as he drove toward the Harborview Hotel, casting long shadows across the city he'd known all his life, a city of secrets and blood and old loyalties. A city where a man known as the Ghost had once moved through the darkness, dealing death with silent efficiency. A city where, unknown to Dante, his past and future were about to collide in room 712. The Harborview Hotel's kitchen buzzed with controlled chaos as Dante guided Cassidy through the maze of stainless steel and steam. Line cooks shouted orders while servers balanced trays of elegant appetizers. No one paid attention to the odd pair, a man in a tailored suit and a battered woman in torn clothes, as they slipped through the back door into the alley. Providence's nightlife pulsed around them. Bass from a nearby club throbbed through the brick walls. Street lamps cast pools of yellow light on cobblestones, still slick from an earlier rain. The city smelled of salt water, gasoline, and fried food from late-night vendors. "My car's 3 blocks east," Dante said, shrugging out of his jacket and draping it over Cassidy's shoulders to cover her torn clothing. "Can you make it?" She nodded, pulling the jacket tighter. "I've managed worse." They moved quickly through back alleys, avoiding main streets where Kaine might have eyes. Providence's Fox Point district had transformed over the past decade. Hip coffee shops and tech startups now occupied buildings where Dante's father had once collected protection money. Old and new lived side by side, much like the city's criminal element. "How long have you been investigating Kaine?" Dante asked as they rounded a corner. 6 months, Cassidy answered, her breathing controlled despite her injuries. "I was hired to find a missing girl, daughter of a tech executive from Boston. Trail led to one of Kaine's wellness retreats. She went in for a cosmetic procedure. Never came out." Dante spotted his black Audi in the parking garage ahead. "And you found more than just one missing person." "I found a goddamn slaughterhouse dressed up as a medical facility." Her voice hardened. "Kaine provides boutique organ transplants to wealthy clients who don't want to wait on official lists. Some donors are willing, desperate people selling kidneys for cash. Others aren't willing at all." Dante finished, remembering the chains in the hotel room. They reached the car, and Dante opened the passenger door for Cassidy before sliding behind the wheel. As he started the engine, his phone rang. Gabriella's name flashed on the screen. "Yeah?" he answered. "Dante, where are you?" His sister's voice was tight with fear. "Mateo Ortega just walked into my restaurant asking questions. He had 2 guys with him. The kind that don't eat in public because their faces are on too many watch lists." Dante's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Mateo, the knife, Ortega, Kaine's enforcer, a man who'd served with special forces before bringing his talents to the criminal world. Lock the place down, Ella. Go to the safe room in the cellar. I'll call when it's clear." "What did you do?" Gabriella demanded. Dante glanced at Cassidy, who watched him with steady eyes. "The right thing, for once. I'll explain later." He ended the call and pulled out of the parking space, keeping his speed steady as they merged onto the street. No squealing tires, no attention-grabbing moves. The ghost knew how to disappear. "Your sister?" Cassidy asked. "They're already looking for us," Dante replied. "We need somewhere to lay low, somewhere they wouldn't expect." Providence spread out before them, a chessboard of possibilities. The waterfront with its shipping containers and forgotten warehouses, the Italian neighborhood with its network of loyalties and betrayals, the emerging tech district with its anonymous glass towers. But Dante knew better than to use any of his usual haunts. The Ricci family had eyes everywhere, and with Don Salvatore's declining health, loyalties were shifting like sand. Who might be working with Kane now? Who could he trust? "I know a place," Cassidy said, as if reading his thoughts. "An old lighthouse keeper's cottage on the coast. It's been abandoned for years. I used it as a surveillance post while watching Kane's Newport facility." Dante nodded, taking the highway ramp heading east out of the city. "Good. We'll need supplies, though. Food, medical kit, weapons. There's a 24-hour pharmacy at the next exit," Cassidy suggested. "I can at least get cleaned up, maybe some basic first aid supplies." 20 minutes later, Dante waited in the car while Cassidy, now dressed in basic clothes purchased from the pharmacy's limited selection, gathered necessities inside. Through the store windows, he could see her moving with purpose. The casual observer would never guess she'd been chained to a chair hours earlier. Military training showed in her efficient movements and alert posture. While he waited, Dante made a call to the one person outside the family he still trusted. "It's 11:30 on a Friday night," answered a gruff voice. "Someone better be dead." "Not yet, Sullivan," Dante replied. "But it's coming." Detective James Sullivan had been on Salvatore Ricci's payroll for 15 years. But his loyalty was to Dante personally after Dante had saved his daughter from a human trafficking ring, without asking for anything in return. "What kind of trouble are you in, Ghost?" Sullivan asked, his voice dropping. "The worst kind. I need you to run a name. Cassidy Reynolds, former military intelligence, now private security. And I need to know if there's any unusual police activity around the Harborview Hotel tonight." Sullivan was quiet for a moment. "This have something to do with Julian Kane?" Word came down this afternoon to give his people wide berth anywhere in the city. "Just run the name, James. And watch your back. Give me an hour. And Dante? Whatever you stepped in, it must be deep if you're calling me after all this time." Cassidy returned to the car with several bags. Besides medical supplies and toiletries, she'd purchased burner phones, a prepaid credit card, and 2 large coffees. "Your face is all over the store's security cameras now," Dante observed as they pulled back onto the highway. "Better than yours," she replied, handing him a coffee. "The Ghost is still a legend in certain circles. I'm just another private investigator." The highway curved along the coastline, the moonlight casting a silver path across the Atlantic. To their left, Providence's skyline receded, its lights twinkling like fallen stars. To their right, darkness stretched to the horizon, broken only by the occasional flash of a lighthouse beacon. "How deep are you in with the Ricci family?" Cassidy asked after several minutes of silence. Dante considered the question. "I was born into it. My father was Salvatore's consigliere. When he died, the Don raised me like a son, trained me, made me what I am." "And what's that?" "A ghost," Dante said simply. "Someone who could make problems disappear without leaving evidence. I was good at it for a long time, but not anymore." Dante's hands tightened on the wheel. 3 years ago, I walked away from that part of the life. I still work for the family, but only legitimate business." Cassidy's laugh held no humor. "There's nothing legitimate about organized crime, Dante." "Maybe not," he conceded, "but there's a difference between laundering money through real estate and cutting people open to sell their organs." The lighthouse appeared on the horizon, its beam sweeping across the ocean in rhythmic pulses. Beside it, barely visible in the darkness, stood the keeper's cottage, a small stone building weathered by decades of salt and storm. "We should be safe here for a day or two," Cassidy said. "Long enough to access my backup data and figure out our next move." Dante parked behind a stand of wind-twisted pines, hiding the car from the coastal road. As they approached the cottage, the ocean's roar grew louder, drowning out all other sounds. The perfect place to disappear, the perfect place to plan. But as Dante looked back toward Providence, he knew the city wouldn't let him go so easily. Not this time. Dawn broke over the Atlantic, painting the lighthouse cottage in pale gold light. Dante stood at the cracked window, scanning the coastal road for any sign of pursuit, while Cassidy slept fitfully on the narrow cot behind him. The cottage was Spartan. One room with a rusted sink, a small wood stove, and shelves lined with forgotten supplies. The previous night, they'd cleaned her wounds by lantern light, neither speaking much as the reality of their situation settled around them like dust. His burner phone vibrated. "Sullivan, what did you find?" Dante asked without preamble. "Cassidy Reynolds," Sullivan replied, his voice tight with urgency. "Honorable discharge from Marines, Force Recon, Bronze Star in Afghanistan. Worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency until 3 years ago. Now runs her own security consultation firm in Boston. Specializes in finding people who don't want to be found. Any warrants? Enemies? Clean record. But here's where it gets interesting. She was hired by William Chen, tech CEO from Boston, to find his daughter, Lily. The girl disappeared after scheduling a rejuvenation treatment at Kane's Wellness Center." Dante watched Cassidy stir on the cot. "And the Harborview Hotel? It's a war zone. 2 bodies in room 712. Kaney's men. Executed. Professional job. Hotel security footage mysteriously corrupted. But here's the kicker. Commissioner Chen is personally overseeing the investigation." The name hit Dante like a physical blow. "Commissioner Robert Chen? As in William Chen's brother?" "The same. Whatever your friend found, it got the commissioner's attention, and he's not known for his gentle questioning techniques." After ending the call, Dante poured water from a plastic bottle into his cupped hand and splashed it over his face. The cold shock cleared his mind, but the path forward remained murky. His options were collapsing around him with each passing hour. Cassidy's voice came from behind him, rough with sleep and pain. "Who were you talking to?" "A cop I know. He confirmed your story and added some details." Dante turned to face her. "You didn't mention your client was related to Police Commissioner Chen." She pushed herself up, wincing. The bruises on her face had darkened overnight, mapping constellations of violence across her skin. Wasn't relevant until now. William didn't want to use his brother's influence. He was afraid it would push Lily's captors underground. "Well, the commissioner is involved now, and we have bodies at the hotel." Dante handed her a bottle of water and some painkillers from their pharmacy supplies. "Which means every cop in 3 states will be looking for us by noon. 2 of Kane's men are dead, executed in the hotel room after we left." Dante's mind worked through the implications. "Professional job, according to my source. Someone else is in the game." Cassidy swallowed the pills dry. "Could be internal. Kane has enemies in his own organization, men who think he's drawing too much heat with his side business." A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves against the rocky shore below. The morning light caught the dust motes floating in the air, making them sparkle like tiny stars in the gloom of the cottage. "Let me see your evidence," Dante finally said. "If I'm going to risk everything, I need to know what we're dealing with." Cassidy nodded and reached for her bag, pulling out the burner phone they'd purchased the night before. She dialed a long number from memory, then entered a complex password. After a moment, her face hardened. It's gone. The backup server's been wiped clean. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Caney must have found my failsafe. You don't have copies anywhere else? I have partial data on a flash drive hidden in Boston. Names, dates, some financial records. But the most damning evidence, the surgical logs, the donor-recipient matches, the payment records, that was only on the server. Frustration edged her voice. Without it, we have suspicions but no proof. Dante paced the small room, weighing options. Return to Providence and face both Kaine and the police? Go to Boston to retrieve the partial evidence? Or simply disappear, something he'd been expertly trained to do? His phone vibrated again. A text from Gabriella. Salvatore asking for you. Says it's urgent. Safe to come to the house. He showed the message to Cassidy. My sister. The Don wants to see me. It could be a trap, or it could be our only chance at protection. Dante ran a hand through his hair. Salvatore suspected Kane was up to something. That's why he sent me to that meeting. If I explain what I found, he might back us against Kane. And if he doesn't? Cassidy challenged. If he decides you're a liability? Or worse, if he's working with Kane? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Don Ricci had been like a father to Dante, had shaped him into the man he was today. But business was business, and Dante had just disrupted a major deal while potentially starting a war with the Santoro family. I know you don't trust easily, Dante said quietly. Neither do I. But we need allies, and right now, Salvatore Ricci is the only power in Providence who might stand against Julian Kane. Cassidy's eyes, sharp despite her injuries, studied him carefully. This isn't just about exposing Kane, is it? This is personal for you. No, Dante started, then stopped himself. Yes, maybe. I don't know. He moved to the window again, watching a gull sweep across the brightening sky. 3 years ago, I walked away from killing, told myself I was done with that life. But I never really left, did I? Just found cleaner ways to serve the family. And now? Now I found a woman chained to a chair, and everything I've been pretending to be falls apart. Dante turned back to her. You were right in the hotel room. I couldn't leave you there. Not because I'm a good man, I'm not, but because some lines shouldn't be crossed. Not even in our world. A ghost of a smile touched Cassidy's lips. So the ghost has a code after all. A flawed one. Dante checked his watch. We need to decide. Salvatore won't wait forever. Cassidy stood, steadier than the night before. I'm going to Boston. The flash drive isn't much, but it's all I have left. You do what you need to do with your Dawn. She held his gaze. But if you betray me to save yourself, remember, I found Julian Kane when no one else could. I'll find you too. The threat should have angered him. Instead, Dante felt something unexpected. Respect, and perhaps something warmer. This woman, beaten and chained, still stood defiant against the world. It reminded him of someone he'd once been, before years of blood and shadow had worn him down. We go together, he said suddenly, the decision crystallizing in his mind. First to Salvatore, then to Boston. We need both the protection of the Ricci family and your evidence if we're going to survive this. Why risk yourself for me? Cassidy asked. You could walk away, blame everything on a rogue operation, say I manipulated you. Kane might even believe it. Dante shook his head. 3 years ago, I stopped being the ghost because I couldn't live with what I'd become. Last night in that hotel room, I made a choice to be something different. He met her eyes directly. I'm not walking away from that choice now. The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken understanding. Then Cassidy nodded once, decisive. Then we'd better get moving. The longer we wait, the more time Kane has to cover his tracks. As they gathered their meager supplies and prepared to leave the lighthouse cottage, Dante felt a strange lightness in his chest. For the first time in years, his path was clear. Not easy, not safe, but clear. He had chosen to stand against the darkness instead of serving it, and whatever came next, whether victory or death, at least it would be on his own terms. The pivotal choice had been made, not just in the hotel room, but here in this moment, to become the ghost once more, but this time to haunt those who truly deserved it. Providence looked different as they approached from the east, the morning sun gilding its skyline. To Dante, who had known these streets since childhood, the city suddenly felt alien, a place where hidden dangers lurked behind every familiar corner. You sure about this? Cassidy asked from the passenger seat. She'd changed into clothes from a roadside gas station. Jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. The bruises were less noticeable now, but still visible to anyone looking closely. No, Dante admitted, but Salvatore deserves to hear it from me directly. They took a circuitous route to Don Ricci's colonial-style mansion, avoiding main roads and using old smugglers' paths that wound through the less developed edges of the city. Dante kept one eye on the rearview mirror, watching for tails. As they pulled up to the service entrance of the estate, Gabriella stepped out from behind a hedge, her face tight with worry. You're all over the police scanner, she hissed, as Dante and Cassidy exited the car. Her eyes widened at Cassidy's bruised face. Jesus, Dante, what did you do? The right thing. For once. He repeated his words from the previous night. Salvatore inside? In the sunroom. Mateo Ortega was here an hour ago, but Salvatore wouldn't see him. Gabriella looked between them. Who's she? Someone who knows what Kane is really doing with that waterfront property. Dante moved toward the door, then stopped. Is anyone else here? Commissioner Chen? Any of Kane's people? Just the regular security and Rosa, she answered, referring to the Don's longtime housekeeper. Dante, what's going on? I'll explain later. Watch the perimeter. If anyone comes, anyone, call me immediately. The mansion's interior was cool and quiet, smelling of lemon polish and the roses Rosa placed fresh each morning in crystal vases. Dante led Cassidy through the kitchen and down a wood-paneled hallway toward the sunroom at the back of the house. Family photographs lined the walls, generations of Rixus, including several of a younger Dante standing proudly beside Salvatore. He raised you, Cassidy observed quietly, after my father was killed. Took me in when I was 12. Dante paused outside the sunroom door. Wait here a moment. Let me talk to him first. Inside, Don Salvatore Ricci sat in his usual place by the window, watching the bay. He seemed smaller somehow, more fragile than he had just days ago. A tartan blanket covered his legs despite the room's warmth. Dante, he said without turning. You missed our meeting. Things got complicated, Dante replied, taking the chair opposite the old man. The deal with Kane, it's not what you thought. No. Salvatore finally turned to face him, his roomy eyes suddenly sharp. Then what is it? Organ trafficking. He's using the medical spa as a front to harvest organs from unwilling donors, selling them to wealthy clients who don't want to wait for legal transplants. The words hung in the sunlit air. He had a woman chained in that hotel room, a private investigator who got too close to his operation. The Don's face remained impassive. And where is this woman now? Dante hesitated, then called over his shoulder. You can come in. Cassidy entered the sunroom, her posture straight despite her injuries. She nodded respectfully to the old man but remained silent, letting Dante finish. She had evidence, Don Ricci. Records of all of Kane's operations. Names, dates, financial transactions. But Kane's people found her backup server and wiped it. We're going to Boston to retrieve what's left of the data. Salvatore studied Cassidy with the calculating gaze of a man who had built an empire on his ability to read people. You worked for William Chen? He said, surprising both of them. Looking for his daughter, Lily. Cassidy's eyes narrowed slightly. How did you know that? Providence is my city, Miss Reynolds. Very little happens here without my knowledge. The Don shifted in his chair, wincing at some hidden pain. What Dante hasn't told you is that I've been investigating Julian Kane for months. He's become a problem that needs solving. Dante leaned forward. Then you believe us? I believe Julian Kane is a monster who has forgotten his place in the natural order of things. Salvatore's voice hardened. But you've complicated matters, Dante. 2 dead men at the Harbor View. Commissioner Chen personally involved. The Santoro family demanding answers. Those deaths weren't our doing, Cassidy interjected. Someone executed Kane's men after we left. The Don nodded slowly. Mateo Ortega, most likely. Cleaning up loose ends. He fixed his gaze on Dante. You cannot return to Providence after you retrieve this evidence. The city will be too hot for you. The statement hit Dante like a physical blow. Providence was his home, his territory, the only place he'd ever truly belonged. For how long? Until I'm dead, Salvatore replied with brutal honesty. I can protect you while I live, but my time is short. You know this. The dementia is winning. When I'm gone, the protection dies with me. Silence fell in the sunroom, broken only by the distant call of gulls over the bay. Dante felt the world shifting beneath him. Everything he'd known, everything he'd built, crumbling away. "Then what do you suggest?" he finally asked. Salvatore reached for a drawer in the side table, his movements slow and deliberate. He withdrew a thick envelope. 50,000 in cash. Passports, several identities I've kept in reserve. Contact information for associates in Montreal, Miami, and Seattle. He pushed the envelope toward Dante. "Get the evidence, expose Kaine's operation, then disappear, and leave you to face the fallout?" Dante shook his head. "I can't do that. You can and you will." For a moment, the old Don's strength returned, his voice commanding as it had been in his prime. "This is my final order to you, Dante. Finish this job, then ghost away for good." Before Dante could respond, Gabriella burst into the room, her face pale. "Police cars just turned onto the drive. Commissioner Chen is with them." Salvatore's expression didn't change. "The back exit, through the wine cellar. The tunnel will take you to the boathouse. Go, now." Dante stood, the envelope clutched in his hand. "Salvatore, no goodbyes," the old man interrupted. "Just go. Do what must be done." With one last look at the man who had shaped his life, Dante followed Cassidy and Gabriella from the sunroom. They moved quickly through the house toward the cellar stairs, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. As they descended into the dimness below, police sirens wailed in the driveway. "The tunnel's behind the third wine rack," Gabriella explained, leading them through stacks of aged bottles. "It hasn't been used in years, but it should get you to the boathouse." She pulled on a specific bottle, and with a soft click, the entire rack swung outward, revealing a narrow passage hewn from the bedrock beneath the estate. "You should come with us," Dante told his sister. "If they connect you to me, I'll be fine." She cut him off. "I run a legitimate restaurant. Besides, someone needs to watch over Salvatore." She embraced him fiercely. "Be careful, brother. Call when you can." The tunnel was damp and low, forcing them to hunch as they made their way by the light of their phones. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled of salt and decay. After what seemed like an eternity of darkness, they emerged into the boathouse, where a sleek motorboat waited at the dock. "Can you handle this?" Dante asked Cassidy as they climbed aboard. She took the wheel without hesitation. "3 tours guarding naval vessels in the Persian Gulf. I think I can manage a motorboat." The engine roared to life, and they pulled away from the dock just as shouts echoed from the tunnel behind them. Cassidy opened the throttle, and the boat surged forward, cutting through the bay's calm waters toward the open sea. Behind them, Providence's skyline receded, and with it, everything Dante had ever known. Ahead lay Boston, the evidence, and a future as uncertain as the churning wake that stretched between their boat and the shore. The consequences of his choice were now fully in motion, irreversible as the tide. Boston Harbor greeted them with industrial indifference. Container ships, security patrols, and the constant buzz of commerce. They'd abandoned the boat at a small inlet 20 miles south and hired a cab using cash from Salvatore's envelope. Now, as evening approached, they sat in a nondescript diner in South Boston, planning their next move. "The flash drive is in a storage locker at South Station," Cassidy explained over untouched coffee. "But we can't just walk in. By now, Kane will have people watching all the obvious locations." Dante studied the burner phone, where he'd pulled up news coverage from Providence. Their faces hadn't been released to the media yet, but the Harborview Hotel murders were front-page news. Commissioner Chen was quoted promising swift justice. "We need a distraction," Dante said, setting down the phone. "Something to draw attention away from South Station, while one of us retrieves the drive." Cassidy leaned back, her tactical mind visibly working. "I have a contact in Boston PD, detective named Harper. She owes me a favor after I helped her brother with a stalker situation. If I can reach her securely, she might be able to help." "Can you trust her with something this big?" "No," Cassidy admitted. "But I can trust her to deliver a message to William Chen. If his daughter is one of Kane's victims, he has every reason to help us." Dante considered this. "What's your play?" "We tell Chen we have evidence regarding Lily's disappearance, enough to link it to Kaine's operation. We arrange a meet, but publicly, somewhere Kaine's people would notice. Creating a diversion while one of us goes for the flash drive." Dante nodded, impressed. "Could work, but it puts Chen at risk." "He's been at risk since he hired me," Cassidy replied. "And from what your Don said, he already knows more than he's letting on." They moved to a hotel in Cambridge, paying cash and using one of the passport identities Salvatore had provided. The room was small but clean, with 2 beds and a bathroom where Cassidy could finally shower properly and tend to her wounds away from Dante's eyes. When she emerged, Wearing fresh clothes purchased from a nearby store, Dante was cleaning a handgun he'd acquired through one of Salvatore's Boston contacts. "Where did you learn to shoot?" he asked without looking up. "Marine Corps. Force Recon." Cassidy sat on the edge of the bed opposite him. "I was one of the first women to qualify. Served 8 years, then transitioned to intelligence work." Dante nodded, reassembling the weapon with practiced ease. "Military to private sector. That's a common path. What about you? Where does a mob enforcer learn his trade?" His hands stilled momentarily. "Salvatore sent me to train with former Spetsnaz operators in Ukraine when I was 19. Before that, it was older members of the family teaching me the basics. Gun handling, how to follow someone, how to disappear." He finished reassembling the gun and set it aside. The rest came with practice. A silence fell between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with unasked questions. "Why did you stop?" Cassidy finally asked. "You mentioned walking away from killing 3 years ago." Dante stood and moved to the window, looking out at the Cambridge skyline. There was a target. A witness to a deal gone bad. "Nothing special about the job. I'd done dozens like it." His voice grew distant. "I followed him for days. Learned his routines. His name was Michael Everett, English professor at Rhode Island College. Had 3 kids. Youngest was maybe 5. He turned back to face her. The night came to finish it. I was in his house, in his kitchen, gun ready. He came downstairs for a glass of water, never saw me standing in the shadows. And I just couldn't do it. Couldn't squeeze the trigger. 16 years of following orders without question. And suddenly I was frozen. What did you do? I left. Went straight to Salvatore and told him I was done with killing. Expected him to have me eliminated on the spot. A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips. Instead, he nodded and said, "Then you'll do other things for me." Just like that. Gave me a week off, then put me in charge of real estate acquisitions. Cassidy absorbed this. And the witness? Salvatore had him relocated, gave him money, a new identity. Said sometimes mercy was better business than murder. Dante shook his head slightly. "I think he was waiting for years for me to make that choice. To find my own line I wouldn't cross. And now you've crossed another line," Cassidy observed, "helping me against Kane." "Yes." Dante met her eyes directly. "No going back now." The moment stretched between them, an understanding forming without words. 2 people from different worlds, bound together by choices that had altered the course of their lives. Cassidy broke the silence first. "We should contact Detective Harper tonight. Set the plan in motion for tomorrow." Dante nodded. "I'll arrange backup transportation and emergency extraction routes. If this goes sideways, we'll need options." They worked through the evening, falling into an easy rhythm. Cassidy made the call to her contact while Dante mapped escape routes on a tourist guide to Boston. They ordered takeout and ate, while comparing notes on Kane's operation, piecing together what they knew from different angles. "His medical background is the key," Cassidy said, spreading out printouts of Kane's history. Johns Hopkins surgical residency, specialization in transplant surgery, dismissed after allegations of unauthorized research involving organ preservation techniques, which explains how he can transport the harvested organs, Dante added. "Standard medical protocols only give you hours to transplant most organs. If Kine developed a way to extend that window, he could ship globally. Wealthy clients from anywhere in the world." Cassidy pinned a note to their makeshift evidence board. "That's why his clients fly in from overseas for specialized treatments. They're either receiving organs or being evaluated as potential recipients. But where is he performing the surgeries?" Dante wondered aloud. "Not at the wellness center. It's too public. Too many employees." Cassidy frowned in concentration. "The waterfront property, the one your Don was helping him acquire, it's perfect. Isolated, access to water for transport, enough space for a full surgical facility. And if Salvatore Ricci's name was on the paperwork as a partner, it would give Kane legitimacy," Dante realized. No one would look too closely at a Ricci-backed venture. The pieces were fitting together, forming a picture more horrific than either had initially imagined. Not just organ trafficking, but a sophisticated international operation with powerful protection. As midnight approached, Cassidy's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Harper. "Message delivered. Chen wants to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Boston Common by the bandstand." "We're on," Cassidy said, showing Dante the message. "Good. While you meet with Chen, I'll retrieve the flash drive." Dante began checking the weapon again. "Then we rendezvous at the Harvard Square T station and head south, out of the city. And after that, the question hung between them. After retrieving the evidence, what then? Where would they go? How would they bring down an operation as vast and well-protected as Kaine's? Dante thought of Salvatore's words. Get the evidence, expose Kaine's operation, then disappear. The path seemed clear yet impossibly complicated. One step at a time, he finally said. First the evidence, then we decide how best to use it. Cassidy nodded, accepting the pragmatic approach. She moved to her bed and lay down, still fully clothed, her body finally demanding rest after days of adrenaline and pain. You should sleep too, she told Dante. Tomorrow will be high risk, but Dante remained at the window, watching the city lights, his mind racing with contingency plans. The ghost was reawakening within him. The tactical awareness, the constant vigilance, the ability to see 3 moves ahead in a deadly game. Yet something was different this time. In the past, he'd been a weapon aimed by Salvatore Ricci, precise but ultimately controlled by another's will. Now, for the first time, he was choosing his own targets, fighting for something beyond family loyalty or business interests. He glanced at Cassidy, already asleep on the bed, her bruised face relaxed in temporary peace. In her, he recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood lines that couldn't be crossed, even in a world where morality was usually a luxury few could afford. Tomorrow would bring danger, perhaps death, but it would also bring purpose, something Dante had been searching for since the night he couldn't pull the trigger on an innocent man. The ghost was back, but this time, he would haunt the guilty. Boston Common hummed with midday activity. Joggers on lunch breaks, tourists snapping photos, students sprawled on the grass with textbooks. Cassidy sat on a bench near the bandstand, a newspaper open in her lap, her baseball cap pulled low. The bruises on her face had faded enough to be covered with makeup, making her just another face in the crowd. Her burner phone showed 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes until the meeting with William Chen. 300 yards away, Dante approached South Station from the southeast entrance, moving with the confident stride of someone with legitimate business. He'd shaved that morning and wore glasses with clear lenses. A subtle but effective alteration to his appearance. The storage locker key felt heavy in his pocket. I'm in position, he murmured into his own burner phone. Any sign of Chen? Not yet, Cassidy replied, scanning the common. No obvious surveillance either, but they'll be here. The minute Chen shows, I move on the locker. In and out in under 3 minutes. Dante ended the call and entered the station, merging with the flow of commuters. South Station's main concourse stretched before him, a cathedral of transit with soaring ceilings and the constant echo of announcements. He moved past food vendors and newsstands, maintaining a casual pace while his eyes methodically swept for watchers. There, a man in a windbreaker standing too still by the ticket machines, his attention not on the departure board but on the storage lockers. And there, a woman with a rolling suitcase who hadn't moved toward any platform in the 5 minutes since Dante had entered. Kane's people, almost certainly. At the common, Cassidy spotted William Chen approaching the bandstand. Even at a distance, the tech executive's grief was visible in his stooped shoulders and hollow eyes. He'd aged a decade since the press photos she'd seen when first taking the case. He's here, she said into the phone. Moving to make contact. You're clear to proceed. She stood, leaving the newspaper, and walked toward Chen with measured steps. His head lifted at her approach, recognition and hope flashing across his face. Miss Reynolds, he said, his voice barely audible. You're alive. Barely, she replied, guiding him to walk beside her rather than standing in one place. I found what happened to Lily. Chen's breath caught. Is she? I don't know yet, Cassidy answered honestly. But I know who took her and why. Julian Kane is running an organ trafficking ring through his wellness centers. People check in for routine procedures and disappear. Chen's face drained of color. My brother said the investigation was ongoing, but I sensed he was hiding something. His hands trembled. He told me to be patient, that these things take time. Your brother may be compromised, Cassidy said carefully. Commissioner Chen has been protecting Kane's operation, deliberately or not. At South Station, Dante timed his approach to the storage lockers, waiting for the perfect moment. A school group entered the concourse, filling the space with noise and movement. The ideal cover. He slipped between the children, using their chaos as camouflage, and reached the locker bay. Locker 447. The key slid in smoothly. Inside was a single item, a red flash drive smaller than his thumbnail. He pocketed it and was turning to leave when his phone vibrated. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Abort. Trap. Dante's instincts screamed. He scanned the concourse again and noticed a new presence. 4 men in suits entering from different entrances, moving with the coordinated precision of a tactical team. Not Kaine's thugs, professionals, law enforcement. He changed direction immediately, heading for the restrooms instead of the exit. Once inside, he locked himself in a stall, extracted the tiny flash drive, and unscrewed the cap from a travel-sized mouthwash bottle he'd prepared earlier. He dropped the drive in, sealed it, and returned it to his pocket. Then he flushed the toilet and exited the stall, washing his hands calmly as 2 of the suited men entered. Their eyes met in the mirror. The game was up. "Dante Esposito?" the taller one asked, hand moving inside his jacket. "FBI, we need you to come with us." At Boston Common, Cassidy and Chen were still walking, her phone clutched in her hand as she waited for Dante's confirmation. Instead, a different message appeared. "Federal agents at station. Evidence secured. Protocol Echo." Her heart sank. Protocol Echo. Their emergency separation plan. If either was captured, the other would proceed alone with whatever evidence they had. No rescue attempts, no contact for 48 hours. "Something's wrong," she told Chen, shifting gears instantly. "My partner's been intercepted. We need to move." Chen looked bewildered. "What partner? Move where?" "The man who helped me escape. He was retrieving evidence from South Station, but federal agents were waiting." Cassidy's mind raced. "Someone knew our plan. Someone with federal connections. Like my brother," Chen said, his voice hardening with realization. "We need to get off the street," Cassidy insisted, guiding him toward the nearest exit from the park. "And I need to know exactly what your brother told you about Lily's disappearance." As they hurried across the common, Chen spoke in a low voice. "Robert said there was no evidence of foul play, that she likely left voluntarily. But then last week, he called asking if Lily had any distinctive medical conditions or genetic markers that could identify her tissue." Cassidy stopped abruptly. "Tissue? Not her body? Specifically tissue?" "Yes." Chen's eyes widened. Why would he ask that unless he was trying to identify organs, not a person? Cassidy finished, the horrific revelation settling over them both. At South Station, Dante sat in a featureless interrogation room, facing an FBI special agent who had introduced himself as Marcus Rivera. The mouthwash bottle had been confiscated along with his other possessions, but they hadn't yet discovered its secret contents. "We've been building a case against Julian Kane for 8 months, Rivera explained, sliding photos across the table. "Organ trafficking, kidnapping, murder. But we couldn't get inside his operation. Until now." The photos showed surveillance images of Kane's Newport facility, along with charts tracking international flights of wealthy individuals arriving for treatment. "Then why detain me?" Dante asked carefully. "I have evidence that could help your case." "Because you're Dante, the ghost Esposito," Rivera replied, "enforcer for the Ricci family. 26 suspected homicides attributed to you, though we've never had enough evidence to charge you." He leaned forward. "And now suddenly you're working against Julian Kane? We need to understand why." Dante considered his options. Cooperation might be his only path forward, but trusting federal agents went against everything he'd been taught. "I found Cassidy Reynolds chained in a hotel room," he finally said. "Kane was planning to harvest her organs. I made a choice." "A moral awakening from the ghost?" Rivera sounded skeptical. "Or a mob power play?" Before Dante could respond, the door opened. A woman in a crisp suit entered, whispering something in Rivera's ear. His expression changed. "We'll continue this later," Rivera said, gathering his files. "It seems we have a situation developing." As the agents left him handcuffed to the table, Dante caught fragments of their hushed conversation. "Commissioner Chen. Found dead. Apparent suicide. Note. Implicating Kane." The revelation struck like lightning. Commissioner Chen dead? A suicide note conveniently pointing to Kaine? The pieces rearranged themselves in Dante's mind, forming a new and more disturbing picture. This wasn't just about organ trafficking. It was about power, corruption at the highest levels, and a cover-up in progress. And somewhere in Boston, Cassidy was alone with William Chen, potentially walking into even greater danger. Across the city, in a small cafe off Harvard Square, Cassidy examined the files William Chen had pulled up on his laptop. After fleeing the Common, he'd revealed his own investigation into his daughter's disappearance, financial records of Kaine's organization, shipping manifests for medical supplies to the Providence waterfront property, and most disturbingly, redacted police reports that his brother had secretly provided. Robert knew, Chen said, his voice hollow. He knew what Kane was doing but couldn't move against him. Someone higher up was protecting the operation. Cassidy's phone buzzed with a news alert. Boston Police Commissioner Robert Chen, found dead in apparent suicide. She showed the screen to William, who stared at it in shock. "This isn't right," he whispered. Robert wouldn't. He was helping me secretly. He was gathering evidence. "He became a liability," Cassidy said grimly. "Kine is cleaning house." The cafe television switched to breaking news, showing federal agents raiding Julian Kane's Newport facility. The reporter's voice came through clearly. Following information provided by an anonymous source, Commissioner Chen left a detailed confession, implicating himself and Dr. Julian Kane in an international organ trafficking ring. "They're framing Robert as the mastermind," William realized, his face ashen, "making him the fall guy, while the real power's behind this walk away clean." Cassidy's tactical mind processed the implications. Dante in federal custody, Commissioner Chen dead and framed. A convenient raid that would likely find nothing of significance at Kane's Newport facility, because the real operation was at the Providence waterfront property, and somewhere in the shadows, pulling strings, was someone powerful enough to orchestrate all of it, someone whose identity remained hidden. "We need to get to Providence," she said, closing Chen's laptop. "The waterfront property is where we'll find the truth. And maybe Lily." "How? The FBI has your partner, and my brother's dead. Who can we trust now?" Cassidy thought of the flash drive Dante had recovered, now in FBI possession. "There's only one person in Providence with enough power and reason to help us." "Who?" "Don Salvatore Ricci," she replied, already formulating a plan. "The man who raised Dante, and who has his own reasons to want Kine exposed." As they left the cafe, neither noticed the black SUV parked across the street, nor the man watching them through polarized windows. Mateo, the knife Ortega, his scarred face illuminated briefly by the glow of his phone as he sent a text message. "Target located. Moving to intercept." The revelation was complete. What had seemed a straightforward case of organ trafficking had evolved into something far more complex. A conspiracy reaching into law enforcement, a power struggle between criminal organizations. And at the center of it all, Julian Kane, the surgeon whose scalpel cut through lives and lies with equal precision. And now the race was on to reach Providence before Kane's operation could disappear completely, taking its secrets, and possibly Lily Chen, with it. Rain battered the windshield as Cassidy drove south on I-95, the borrowed car hugging the wet asphalt. William Chen sat beside her, his laptop open, frantically downloading files to a new flash drive. "If they can fake my brother's suicide and turn him into a scapegoat, they can erase these records at any moment," he explained, fingers flying across the keyboard. "We need local copies." Providence loomed ahead, its skyline blurred by sheets of rain. Night was falling, turning the city into a constellation of lights reflecting off the slick roads and dark water. Cassidy's mind kept returning to Dante. Federal custody could mean anything from formal charges to off-the-books interrogation. The FBI agent who'd detained him, Marcus Rivera, was an unknown variable. Was he part of the conspiracy, or genuinely investigating Kine? Either way, Dante was on his own, just as she was now. "How much farther to this Don's house?" Chen asked, closing his laptop as the download completed. 20 minutes, if we don't hit traffic," Cassidy replied. "But we can't go directly there. We need to make sure we're not followed." "By whom? Kine's people? The FBI? At this point, assume everyone is after us." She took an abrupt exit, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic. "First, we need a secure line to contact Gabriela Esposito, Dante's sister. She's our only way to Salvatore Ricci." 10 miles behind them, Mateo Ortega followed in his black SUV, a hands-free phone connecting him to Julian Kane. "They're heading to Providence," he reported, his voice a rasping whisper from a throat once cut and imperfectly healed. "The woman and William Chen." "Interesting choice," Kine replied, the sounds of medical equipment beeping in the background. "They think Salvatore Ricci will protect them. Should I intercept before they reach him?" "No. Let them get to the old man." A pause then. "We need to accelerate our timetable. Begin final preparations at the waterfront. We move everything tonight." "And the remaining inventory?" Kine's voice turned cold. "Liquidate anything we can't transport. No loose ends." In the FBI field office in Boston, Dante sat across from Agent Rivera once more. The room had changed. More comfortable chairs, a cup of coffee in front of him. His handcuffs removed, The shift in treatment was more concerning than reassuring. Commissioner Chen's suicide changes things, Rivera said, sliding a manila folder across the table. His confession names you as one of Caney's enforcers. Says you eliminated problems for the organ trafficking operation. Dante didn't touch the folder. That's a lie. Chen was killed, and the confession fabricated. By whom? Whoever's really behind Kane's operation. Dante leaned forward. Think about it. Why would Chen implicate himself in Kane, but not name the bigger players? Why kill himself rather than make a deal? Rivera's expression revealed nothing. You have a theory? Kane is protected by someone with enough power to manipulate federal investigations and eliminate high-ranking police officials. Someone who can make evidence disappear and fabricate confessions. Dante held Rivera's gaze. I think you know this, which is why you're keeping me isolated but unprocessed. You're not sure who to trust in your own organization. A flicker of something, confirmation perhaps, crossed Rivera's face before he regained his neutral expression. Tell me about the flash drive in the mouthwash bottle. Insurance, Dante replied. Evidence of Kine's operation that Cassidy Reynolds gathered before she was captured. Names, dates, financial records. We've examined it. Most files are encrypted, but what we could access seems legitimate. Rivera tapped his fingers on the table. Not enough for a case, but enough to raise serious questions. The full evidence is at the Providence waterfront property, Dante said. The one Don Ricci was helping Kine acquire as a cover. That's where the surgical facility is located. That's where the victims are kept before processing. Processing, Rivera repeated, disgust evident in his tone. You mean organ harvesting? Yes. And if Kane knows you've detained me, he's already moving to clear out that facility. Whatever evidence and victims are there will disappear tonight. Rivera stood abruptly. Wait here. As the agent left, Dante's mind raced. If Rivera was legitimate, there might be a chance to stop Caney before the waterfront facility was emptied. If not, if Rivera was part of the conspiracy, then Dante had just revealed that he knew more than he should. Either way, time was running out. In Providence, Cassidy and Chen had switched vehicles twice, and now approached the Fox Point district in a taxi. The rain had intensified, reducing visibility and turning the streets into mirror-like surfaces that reflected the neon signs of restaurants and bars. Drop us at Ricci's Bakery, Cassidy instructed the driver. Corner of Wickenden and Governor. The bakery was closed, its windows dark, but a light glowed from the apartment above. Cassidy led Chen around to the service entrance and knocked a specific pattern. 3 quick taps. Pause. 2 more. After a moment, Gabriela Esposito opened the door, her expression shifting from wariness to recognition. You're the woman from Salvatore's house. Cassidy Reynolds. This is William Chen. We need your help. Gabriela ushered them inside, locking the door behind them. The bakery's kitchen was warm and smelled of bread and sugar. Is Dante with you? The FBI has him, Cassidy replied. Boston field office. We were separated during an operation to retrieve evidence against Julian Kane. Gabriela's face paled. The news says Commissioner Chen killed himself and left a confession implicating Kine and several others, including Dante. My brother didn't kill himself, Chen interjected, his voice tight with controlled anger. He was murdered and framed to protect whoever is really behind this. We need to speak to Don Ricci, Cassidy pressed. The real operation is at the waterfront property. We think there may still be living victims there, including William's daughter. Gabriela studied them both, then nodded once. Salvatore's condition has deteriorated since you last saw him. The doctor says it's a matter of days now. She reached for her coat. But you're right. He's the only one who can help you now. Outside, Mateo Ortega watched the bakery from across the street, rain streaming down the windows of his SUV. He spoke softly into his phone. They've made contact with the sister. Proceeding to phase 2. He ended the call and reached into the back seat, retrieving a case containing a sniper rifle. With practiced efficiency, he assembled the weapon, attaching a scope and sound suppressor. Once complete, he exited the vehicle and moved toward an abandoned building opposite the bakery, a building that offered a clear line of sight to both the service entrance and the street beyond. Across town, at the Providence FBI field office, Agent Rivera returned to the interrogation room with another agent, a stern-faced woman who introduced herself as Special Agent Diaz from the Office of Professional Responsibility. Mr. Esposito, she began. Agent Rivera has shared your concerns about potential corruption within our investigation of Julian Kane. I'm here to evaluate these claims. Dante assessed her carefully. Another layer of complication, or a genuine ally. Impossible to tell. We're preparing a tactical team to raid the waterfront property, Rivera explained. But we need more information. Exact layout, security measures, potential hostage situations. I've never been inside, Dante admitted. But Don Ricci has the original architectural plans. He reviewed them before agreeing to the partnership deal. Diaz and Rivera exchanged glances. Can you get us those plans? Diaz asked. Only if I go in person, Dante replied. Salvatore Ricci won't hand them over to federal agents, especially now with my name linked to Kane's operation in Chen's confession. That's not possible, Diaz said flatly. You're a material witness in a federal investigation. Then you'll be raiding that facility blind, Dante countered. And whatever evidence is there will be gone by morning. A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Rivera spoke. What if we bring him along as a consultant? Unofficial capacity, full surveillance, tactical team standing by? Absolutely not, Diaz began. But Rivera pressed on. We've got one shot at this. If what Esposito says is true, there are lives at stake. People being harvested for organs. He lowered his voice. And if there is corruption within the Bureau, a small, compartmentalized operation is our best chance at finding it. The argument continued in hushed tones until Diaz finally nodded reluctantly. 2 hours. In and out. Full surveillance. If anything seems off, we pull the plug immediately. As they made arrangements, Dante felt the familiar tension of an operation coming together, the calm calculation of angles and contingencies. But beneath it ran a current of something unfamiliar. Genuine urgency, not for his own survival, but for others. For Cassidy, for the potential victims at the waterfront facility, for Lily Chen. The ghost was evolving, becoming something neither he nor his handlers had ever anticipated. At Don Ricci's colonial mansion, Cassidy and Chen were shown into the study rather than the sunroom. Salvatore sat behind a massive oak desk, oxygen tubes in his nostrils, his once commanding presence diminished but still formidable. 2 guards stood at the door, their bulges under their jackets indicating heavy weaponry. Miss Reynolds, the Don greeted her, his voice weaker than before. And Mr. Chen, the man looking for his daughter. You know who I am? Chen asked, surprised. Providence is my city. Salvatore repeated his words from their previous meeting, though perhaps not for much longer. He gestured to chairs across from him. Sit. Tell me why you've risked coming here when half the eastern seaboard is looking for you. Cassidy explained the situation. Dante's capture, Commissioner Chen's murder disguised as suicide, the impending clearance of the waterfront facility. We need your help, she concluded. Access to the facility, and protection to get there. Salvatore's roomy eyes betrayed nothing. And why would I help you? The Ricci family has no interest in a federal investigation that could expose our own operations. Because Dante is in federal custody? Cassidy said bluntly. Because Kane has implicated him in organ trafficking. Because whatever business arrangement you had with Kane has been poisoned, and now threatens your family directly. The old man's lips thinned. And the girl? Lily Chen? You believe she's still alive? William Chen leaned forward. If there's any chance at all, I have to try. She's my only child. Something shifted in Salvatore's expression. A flicker of old pain, perhaps remembrance of his own losses. He pressed a button on the desk. Lorenzo, bring me the waterfront property files, and tell Antonio to prepare a security team. We move in 1 hour. As the guard left to comply, Salvatore fixed his gaze on Cassidy. You've awakened something in Dante that I thought was long dead. A purpose beyond loyalty to family. A conviction that some lines cannot be crossed, even in our world. He made his own choice, Cassidy replied. I just happened to be the catalyst. Perhaps. The Don's gaze turned inward, reflective. Or perhaps you are what he's been waiting for without knowing it. Someone who understands both sides of the line he's tried to walk. Before Cassidy could respond, a massive explosion shook the house, shattering windows and sending plaster dust raining from the ceiling. Alarms blared as the guards rushed to Salvatore, shielding him with their bodies. We're under attack, one shouted, drawing his weapon. Outside, Mateo Ortega directed a team of tactical operators through the estate's grounds, having eliminated the perimeter guards with precision shots. The explosion, a diversionary device at the estate's gatehouse, had served its purpose, drawing attention away from their main approach. Ortega spoke into his radio. Primary target is the study. Neutralize all security. Capture Chen and Reynolds alive. The old man is expendable. Inside, Gabriella burst into the study. They've breached the east wing. At least 12 men, heavily armed. Salvatore remained calm, reaching into his desk drawer for a small key. The panic room, quickly. Lorenzo, the contingency protocol. As the guard rushed to open a hidden door behind a bookshelf, Salvatore handed the key to Cassidy. Warehouse 17, north end of the waterfront property. This unlocks the personnel entrance. His eyes bore into hers with surprising clarity. Save my son. Cassidy took the key, understanding washing over her. You knew all along what would happen if Dante helped me. I knew what kind of man he truly is, Salvatore replied as Lorenzo helped him toward the panic room. Now go. There's a tunnel from the wine cellar that will lead you to the boathouse. Same as before. Gunfire erupted in the hallway outside the study. William Chen looked to Cassidy, panic and determination warring on his face. What now? Now we run, she replied, drawing the handgun Gabriella had provided earlier. And then we find that warehouse and end this, once and for all. As they raced for the cellar stairs, the complication became clear. They were caught in a war between two powerful forces, with the truth about Kaine's operation and the lives of countless victims hanging in the balance. The waterfront facility was their only hope now, but reaching it alive would require all their skill and more than a little luck. And somewhere in the chaos of Providence, Dante was on his way to the same destination, guided by federal agents whose loyalties remained uncertain. The storm was breaking, and in its fury, secrets long buried would finally be exposed. The rain had stopped by the time Dante's FBI convoy approached Providence, leaving behind a city slick with reflections and shrouded in mist. Agent Rivera drove, with Dante in the passenger seat and 2 tactical officers in the back. A second vehicle followed with Agent Diaz and 4 more tactical team members. We're flying dark on this one, Rivera explained, his windshield wipers clearing the last droplets. No radio contact with the main office, no official operation logged, just us. Smart, Dante replied, eyes scanning the familiar streets. If there's corruption in your ranks, a standard raid would be compromised before you crossed the city line. Rivera nodded grimly. The commissioner's death convinced me. Too convenient. Too clean. He glanced at Dante. I've been tracking Kain for 8 months. Every time we get close to something solid, evidence disappears or witnesses recant. Someone's protecting him, Dante agreed. Someone with reach. Their unmarked vehicles turned onto a quiet industrial street, 3 blocks from the waterfront. Rivera pulled into an abandoned garage and killed the engine. Inside, the tactical team began unloading equipment. Ballistic vests, communication headsets, weapons. Agent Diaz approached Dante with a vest. Put this on. You're unarmed and under constant surveillance. One wrong move, we take you down. Clear? Dante accepted the vest without comment. This wasn't the time for pride or resistance. The waterfront facility held answers they all needed, for different reasons. Tell us what to expect, Rivera said as they gathered around a hastily set-up table with satellite images of the waterfront complex. Dante indicated the largest building. Warehouse 17. Former shipping hub, converted for Kane's operation. 3 floors, including basement level. Main entrance here, loading docks on the water side, personnel entrance on the north face. Security? Heavy. Kane's personal security team, likely augmented by Santoro family soldiers. Dante traced the perimeter with his finger. Cameras, motion sensors, armed patrols. And inside? Dante's expression hardened. Based on Cassidy's intelligence, the ground floor is legitimate medical supplies, cover for what happens below. The basement would house the surgical facilities, recovery rooms, and holding cells for inventory. The clinical term hung in the air, a reminder of the horror they were facing. People reduced to parts catalogs. Our primary objective is evidence seizure and victim recovery, Diaz stated firmly. Kaine himself is secondary. He won't be there, Dante said with certainty. Not now. He'll have proxies handling the evacuation, while he maintains deniability. Like Mateo Ortega, Rivera added, sliding a photo across the table. A scarred face with dead eyes. The knife, Dante confirmed. Former Special Forces, dishonorable discharge. Kaine's primary enforcer and problem solver. You know him? By reputation. Dante studied the tactical layout. He'll have the facility locked down tight, with extraction protocols already in motion. Every minute we delay reduces our chances of finding anything, or anyone, still there. Rivera distributed earpieces to the team. We move in 20 minutes. Final equipment check. Then we approach on foot through the shipping yard. Minimum visibility. maximum impact. As the agents prepared, Dante stood slightly apart, the familiar pre-operation calm settling over him. But this time was different. In the past, he'd prepared for violence with emotional detachment, a professional doing a job. Now, his thoughts kept returning to Cassidy, to the victims, to the woman he'd found chained in a hotel room who had somehow reawakened parts of himself he'd thought long dead. Miles away, Cassidy and William Chen emerged from the tunnel into the Ricci family boathouse, guided by Gabriella through the darkness. The gunfire stopped, Gabriella noted, listening intently. Either our security contained the breach, or they've taken the house, Cassidy finished grimly. We can't go back either way. The boathouse contained a sleek motorboat similar to the one they'd escaped in days earlier, plus a storage locker that Gabriella quickly unlocked. Emergency supplies, she explained, removing a waterproof duffel bag. Weapons, cash, burner phones. Standard protocol for situations like this. You're well prepared for home invasions, Chen observed, his academic demeanor increasingly strained by the violence surrounding him. In our world, you plan for every contingency, Gabriella replied, handing Cassidy a Sig Sauer P226 with extra magazines. Especially betrayal. Cassidy checked the weapon with practiced efficiency. We need transportation to the waterfront that won't attract attention. There's a delivery van parked 2 blocks north with keys under the visor, Gabriella said. It's registered to a shell company, untraceable to the Ricci family. She hesitated. I'm coming with you. No, Cassidy said immediately. You need to get somewhere safe. My brother is in federal custody because of you, Gabriella countered, her eyes flashing. Salvatore's house has been attacked. I've lost enough today. She pulled a compact Glock from her jacket. Besides, I know the waterfront better than either of you. Cassidy recognized the determination in Gabriella's face, the same stubborn resolve she'd seen in Dante. Fine, but you follow my lead. This isn't a revenge mission. It's a rescue operation. They moved through the darkness toward the van's location, keeping to shadows and alleyways. Cassidy's military training guided their formation, Chen protected in the center, Gabriella watching their rear, Cassidy on point. Once we reach the warehouse, what's the plan? Chen asked, his voice hushed as they paused behind a dumpster. We infiltrate through the personnel entrance, Cassidy explained, checking the street before motioning them forward. Find the surgical facility, locate any victims still alive, recover whatever evidence remains, and extract. And if we encounter resistance? Gabriella asked. Cassidy's expression hardened. We deal with it. The van was where Gabriella had indicated, an unmarked white delivery vehicle with tinted windows. As they approached, Cassidy noticed something that made her raise her hand in warning. A slight depression in the rear tire, the kind made by someone leaning against it. She gestured for Chen and Gabriella to take cover, then moved forward in a crouch, weapon ready. As she reached the driver's side, a figure stepped from behind the van, tall, military posture, face hidden by the shadow of a hood. Cassidy aimed center mass, finger tensing on the trigger. I wouldn't, came a familiar voice. The figure raised empty hands and stepped into the light cast by a nearby street lamp. We need each other alive. Agent Marcus Rivera, FBI, he identified himself, showing his credentials. I'm here to help. Why should I believe you? Cassidy demanded, weapon still trained on him. Because I just ditched my tactical team to warn you, Rivera replied. The raid on Warehouse 17 is compromised. Someone in the FBI is feeding information directly to Kane. Who? I don't know yet. But Dante figured it out and created a distraction so I could slip away. Rivera's expression was grim. He's buying us time, but not much. Cassidy lowered her weapon slightly. What did he tell you to convince you? That Kane isn't the top of the organization. That whoever's really running this has infiltrated federal law enforcement. And that you two are the only ones he trusts to finish this. Rivera glanced at Chen and Gabriella, who had emerged cautiously from hiding. He was right about one thing. We need the original architectural plans for that warehouse if we're going to have any chance of finding what we're looking for. Salvatore gave me a key to the personnel entrance, Cassidy said, still wary, but recognizing the need for allies. But no plans. Gabriella stepped forward. I know where they are. Salvatore keeps copies of all business documents at my restaurant, in the safe. That's our first stop then, Rivera decided. Before the tactical team realizes I'm gone and the whole operation falls apart. As they piled into the van, Cassidy driving, Rivera beside her, Chen and Gabriella in the back. Providence's waterfront loomed ahead, its warehouses silhouetted against the night sky, like the jagged teeth of a predator waiting to devour them. At Warehouse 17, Dante moved with the FBI tactical team through the shipping yard, using containers and equipment for cover. His wrists were loosely cuffed, a concession to Agent Diaz's insistence on protocol. But he remained an integral part of the operation, guiding them toward the personnel entrance on the north side. Something felt wrong. The perimeter seemed too quiet, too unguarded for a facility supposedly in emergency evacuation mode. No visible security, no patrol patterns, just cameras tracking their movement. They were being watched, allowed to approach. Dante caught the eye of the tactical team leader and gestured toward a shadow moving on their right flank. The agent nodded, adjusting the team's formation to counter the potential threat. But Dante had already realized the truth. The shadow wasn't a threat. It was a distraction. The real danger waited inside. Agent Diaz checked her watch. Rivera should have circled around to the loading dock by now. We move on my mark. Dante made his decision in an instant. With a subtle movement, he slipped his hands free of the loosened cuffs and stepped close to Diaz. "It's a trap," he whispered. "Rivera's been compromised. Everyone here is walking into an ambush." Her eyes widened. "How? No time. I need to create a diversion while you extract your team. There's another way in, through the drainage system on the east side." "Why should I trust you?" Diaz demanded, her hand moving toward her sidearm. "Because I'm still here," Dante replied simply. "If I wanted to run, I would have disappeared the moment we arrived." A heartbeat of decision. Then Diaz nodded once. "What's your play?" "I'll trigger the perimeter alarms, draw their attention to the main entrance. Give me 5 minutes, then take your team through the drainage access. Find the victims, find the evidence. Leave Kane to me." "This isn't how federal operations work, Esposito." Dante almost smiled. "This isn't a federal operation anymore. It's a ghost hunt." Without waiting for her response, he slipped away into the darkness, moving with the silent efficiency that had earned him his nickname. The ghost was back in his element, not as a killer this time, but as something he'd never imagined becoming, a rescuer. At Ricci's restaurant, Cassidy, Rivera, Chen, and Gabriella huddled around the architectural plans spread across the office desk. Gabriella had retrieved them from a hidden safe behind a wine rack in her private cellar. 3 levels, Rivera noted, tracing the schematics. Main warehouse floor, offices on the mezzanine, and a reinforced sublevel with separate power and ventilation systems. "That's where they'd keep the surgical facilities," Cassidy confirmed. "Isolated, controlled environment, soundproof." Chen studied the ventilation layout. "These air filtration systems are hospital-grade, designed to prevent contamination and contain biohazards." His voice caught slightly on the implication. "Multiple access points to the sublevel," Gabriella observed. "Main stairs, freight elevator, and a service corridor that connects to the drainage system." Rivera pointed to the northeast corner. "This section has been modified from the original plans. Reinforced walls, enhanced security, could be where they're holding victims." Cassidy memorized the layout, mentally mapping their approach. "We need to split up. Cover more ground. Increase our chances of finding survivors." "Agreed," Rivera said. "I'll take the main surgical area. Chen, you and Gabriella focus on the potential holding cells. Cassidy, secure the data servers. They'll be keeping records nearby to monitor the inventory." The clinical terminology made Chen flinch, but he nodded resolutely. "What about Kaine, or this enforcer, Ortega?" "Leave them to me if we encounter them," Cassidy replied, checking her weapon one final time. "But our priority is survivors and evidence. Everything else is secondary." As they finalized their preparations, weapons checked, communication signals established, extraction routes memorized, Cassidy felt the familiar focus of pre-mission clarity settling over her. But beneath it ran a current of something else, concern for Dante, somewhere in the same facility, facing unknown dangers. The ghost had saved her once. Now it was her turn to return the favor. Providence's waterfront awaited, a labyrinth of shadows and secrets where monsters in surgical masks harvested lives like crops. But tonight, the hunters would become the hunted. The preparation was complete, the confrontation inevitable. Warehouse 17 loomed against the night sky, its weathered brick facade illuminated by security lights that cast long shadows across the empty loading area. From their vantage point in an abandoned guard shack 50 yards away, Cassidy surveyed the building through night vision binoculars. "Minimal visible security," she reported. 2 guards at the main entrance, camera coverage on all approaches, but no perimeter patrols. "Too quiet," Rivera agreed, checking his weapon. "They're either already gone or waiting for us inside." A sudden flash of light from the far side of the compound answered their question. The main entrance alarm had been triggered, emergency lights bathing the area in harsh brightness. Guards rushed toward the disturbance, weapons drawn. "That's our diversion," Cassidy said, recognizing a tactical move she would have made herself. "Dante?" "Has to be," Gabriella confirmed, her voice tight with worry for her brother. Cassidy made a quick adjustment to the plan. "New approach, drainage access on the east side. Rivera, take point. I'll cover the rear. Move fast, stay tight." They crossed the open ground in a low crouch, using shipping containers and equipment for cover. The personnel entrance Salvatore's key would unlock was 50 yards ahead, a nondescript metal door set into the brick wall. But with the alarm activated, it would be watched. "There," Chen whispered, pointing to a rusted grate partially hidden by overgrown weeds. "Drainage access, just like the plans showed." Rivera helped Chen pull the grate free while Cassidy and Gabriella provided cover. The opening was narrow, a tight squeeze for the adults, but manageable. A fetid smell wafted from the tunnel beyond. "Ladies first," Rivera said with grim humor. Cassidy went headfirst into the darkness, her weapon leading the way. The others followed in sequence, Chen, then Gabriella, with Rivera bringing up the rear. The tunnel was barely 4 feet in diameter, forcing them to crawl through stagnant puddles and decades of industrial waste. After 20 yards, the tunnel opened into a larger drainage junction. From here, a maintenance ladder led upward, presumably to the warehouse sublevel. Cassidy ascended first, testing each rung before putting her full weight on it. At the top, a metal hatch blocked their path. "Locked from the other side," she whispered down to the others. "Can you force it?" Rivera called softly. In response, Cassidy removed a small toolkit from her pocket, the one Gabriella had provided from the emergency supplies. With practiced efficiency, she manipulated the lock mechanism until a satisfying click signaled success. "We're in," she announced, pushing the hatch open a fraction to scan for threats before emerging into a dimly lit maintenance corridor. One by one, they pulled themselves up into the warehouse sublevel. The air here was different, sterile, tinged with antiseptic and something metallic that caught in the back of their throats. Blood, the unmistakable scent of blood. Rivera checked his watch. If this is still an active facility, shift change would typically happen at midnight. It's 11:40 now. "Split up as planned," Cassidy directed. "Communication check every 5 minutes. First sign of trouble, immediate extraction." They moved in different directions. Rivera toward the main surgical area, Chen and Gabriella toward the potential holding cells, and Cassidy toward where the plans had indicated administrative offices would be located. The corridor Cassidy followed was eerily silent. The only sound, the soft hum of ventilation systems and the distant mechanical whir of equipment. She passed several doors, supply closets, mostly, containing medical supplies and surgical equipment packaged for transport. The evacuation was clearly underway, but not yet complete. At the end of the corridor, a reinforced door with a keypad lock blocked her path. She examined it carefully, then reached for her toolkit again. But before she could begin working on the lock, a soft voice spoke from behind her. "I wouldn't bother. They changed the codes an hour ago." Cassidy spun, weapon raised, to find Dante standing there, his clothes dirty and torn, a bruise darkening one cheek, but very much alive. "How did you—" "I'm a ghost, remember?" He approached carefully, aware of her weapon still trained on him. "Rivera sold you out. The whole FBI operation was compromised from the start." Cassidy lowered her gun slightly. "Rivera's here with me. He said you created a diversion so he could warn us." Dante's expression hardened. "That wasn't me. And Rivera isn't who you think he is." Before she could respond, gunfire erupted from somewhere deeper in the facility. Sharp professional bursts followed by screams. Chen and Gabriella, Cassidy realized, already moving in that direction. Dante caught her arm. "Wait. That's exactly what they want. To separate us, pick us off one by one. I can't leave them, and I can't let you walk into an ambush," Dante countered. "There's another way to the holding cells. Through the surgical suite. I found the security hub first thing. I know the layout now, and where they're keeping the survivors." "Survivors?" Cassidy's heart quickened. "There are still people alive here? 6 of them, prepped for final harvesting, including Lily Chen." The revelation hung between them for a heartbeat. Then Cassidy nodded. "Lead the way." They moved together through a service passage, bypassing the main corridors where gunfire continued to echo. Dante's familiarity with the facility was uncanny. He navigated the labyrinthine sublevel with the confidence of someone who had studied it for weeks, not hours. "How did you escape the FBI team?" Cassidy asked as they paused at an intersection, checking for threats. "Agent Diaz." She realized something was wrong when Rivera disappeared. "Got me out of cuffs just before all hell broke loose." His voice tightened. Her team walked into a trap, professional hit squad waiting inside. "Kaina's people?" "Someone's, but not just Kaina's." Dante peered around the corner, then signaled the all clear. "This goes higher than a rogue surgeon with mob connections." Much higher. They reached a door marked Surgical Suite 3 and paused. From inside came the steady beep of medical monitors and the metallic clink of instruments. "Ready," Dante whispered. Cassidy nodded, weapon held at the ready position. They burst through the door together, covering opposite sides of the room. Inside was a scene from a nightmare. A fully equipped operating theater with 6 gurneys arranged in a circle around a central control station. On each gurney lay a person, unconscious or sedated, connected to IV lines and monitoring equipment. Surgical trays waited beside each, instruments gleaming under harsh lights, and standing at the control station, calmly making notations on a tablet, was Julian Kane. He looked up at their entrance, his expression betraying only mild surprise, as if they were late dinner guests, not armed intruders. In his 50s, with silver hair and the precise movements of a surgeon, he radiated cold confidence. "Mr. Esposito, Miss Reynolds." His voice was cultured, almost pleasant. "I was wondering when you'd join us, though I expected Agent Rivera to accompany you." "He's otherwise engaged," Dante replied, his weapon trained on Kane's chest. "Step away from the controls." Kaine sighed dramatically but complied, setting down his tablet and raising his hands shoulder high. "You're interrupting a delicate procedure. These patients require constant monitoring." "Patients?" Cassidy's voice dripped with disgust as she moved to check the nearest gurney. A young Asian woman lay there, her breathing shallow but stable. "You mean victims?" "Semantics," Kaine shrugged. "They're contributing to something greater than themselves, extending lives that society deems more valuable." "Like who?" Dante demanded, keeping his aim steady as he positioned himself between Kaine and the door. "Congressmen, CEOs, foreign dignitaries, people who make decisions that affect millions." Kaine's eyes gleamed with the fervor of a true believer. "One liver from this vagrant here saves the man who funds cancer research that will save thousands. A heart from this drug addict sustains the diplomat preventing a war. It's simple mathematics." "It's murder," Cassidy countered, checking the young woman's pulse. "This is Lily Chen?" "Ah, yes, the tech executive's daughter, prime specimen. Excellent tissue compatibility for 3 high-priority clients." Kaine spoke as if discussing livestock, "though I'm afraid her harvest was scheduled for tonight. You're just in time for the show." A cold rage filled Dante, but he kept his voice steady. "Where's Mateo Ortega?" "Handling other matters." The Ricci estate situation required his personal attention. Kaine's eyes flicked toward a clock on the wall. "He should be rejoining us shortly, along with our special guest." "Special guest?" Cassidy asked, moving to check the other victims while maintaining her aim on Kaine. "The man who made all this possible, my partner and protector." Kaine smiled thinly. "The one who ensured federal investigations were redirected, evidence disappeared, and troublesome witnesses were silenced." As if on cue, the door behind them opened. Rivera entered, his FBI credentials still hanging around his neck, his service weapon pointed at Dante's back. "Special Agent Marcus Rivera," Kaine announced with theatrical flourish. "Or should I say, Assistant Director Marcus Rivera, soon to be promoted for breaking the notorious Ricci Santoro organ trafficking ring." "Drop your weapons," Rivera ordered, his formerly friendly demeanor replaced by cold efficiency. "Now." Cassidy and Dante exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Then, slowly, they lowered their weapons to the floor. "The perfect setup," Dante observed, turning to face Rivera. "You investigate Kaine's operation, while simultaneously protecting it. Feed enough information to your superiors to make it look legitimate, but ensure no meaningful evidence is ever secured." "You understand efficiency," Rivera replied. "I appreciate that about you, Esposito. It's why I hope to recruit you rather than eliminate you." "And Commissioner Chen?" Cassidy asked, her body tensed like a coiled spring despite her apparent surrender. "Was his death efficient too?" "Regrettably necessary. He discovered certain financial transfers that connected me to the operation. His brother's persistence had made him curious. Rivera shrugged. The suicide narrative was cleaner than assassination. Plus, it provided a convenient scapegoat. And now we're loose ends, Dante concluded. Valuable ones, Caney interjected. Miss Reynolds has compatible tissue markers for a Saudi prince who's been waiting 6 months. And you, Mr. Esposito. Your genetic profile is quite remarkable. Several clients would pay premium prices for your organs. The clinical assessment sent a chill through the room. Dante kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing, calculating angles, distances, distractions. He needed one opening, one moment of vulnerability. It came from an unexpected source. A commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Shouts, then gunfire. Rivera's attention shifted momentarily toward the door. In that split second, Dante moved, driving his shoulder into Rivera's midsection, while Cassidy dove for their discarded weapons. The impact sent Rivera stumbling backward, his gun discharging into the ceiling. Dante grappled for control of the weapon, his combat training matching Rivera's FBI defensive tactics. They crashed into medical equipment, sending monitors and IV stands toppling. Cassidy scooped up her handgun and turned toward Kine, only to find he had retreated behind the control station and drawn his own weapon. A sleek automatic pistol now aimed at Lily Chen's unconscious form. One more move and I destroy $1 million inventory item, he threatened. Outside, the gunfire intensified. The door burst open again, revealing William Chen and Gabriella, both breathing hard and wild-eyed. Lily! Chen cried, seeing his daughter on the gurney. Caney immediately shifted his aim toward the newcomers, giving Cassidy her opening. She fired twice, precise shots that struck Kane's shoulder and hand, sending his weapon clattering to the floor. He howled in pain, clutching his bleeding arm. Meanwhile, Dante and Rivera continued their desperate struggle. Rivera was younger, formally trained, but Dante fought with the ruthless efficiency of someone who had survived decades in a world where defeat meant death. He managed to pin Rivera's gun hand against a surgical tray, then drove his elbow into the agent's throat. Rivera gasped for air, his grip on the weapon loosening. Dante wrenched the gun away and stepped back, now holding Rivera at gunpoint. It's over, he declared. You think so? Rivera rasped, a bloody smile spreading across his face. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many people are involved. Kill me, and they'll send someone else. Then someone else after that? Maybe, Dante acknowledged, but you'll still be dead. Before he could decide whether to pull the trigger, a new figure appeared in the doorway. Mateo, the knife Ortega. His scarred face expressionless as he surveyed the scene. Blood stained his tactical gear, none of it apparently his own. You're late, Rivera snapped, still gasping for breath. Traffic, Ortega replied flatly. His eyes found Dante's. The ghost. I've heard stories. They're all true, Dante said, keeping his weapon trained on Rivera while trying to track Ortega's position. The enforcer's reputation for lightning-fast knife work made him a lethal threat at close quarters. But Ortega didn't move to attack. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket and withdrew not a knife, but a phone. He pressed a single button, then returned it to his pocket. What are you doing? Kane demanded, still clutching his bleeding shoulder. Following orders, Ortega replied. And with that enigmatic statement, he drew his sidearm and shot Rivera directly between the eyes. The gunshot echoed through the surgical suite like a thunderclap. Rivera crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the ground. For a heartbeat, everyone froze in shock. What the hell? Cassidy broke the silence, her weapon now trained on Ortega. My employer doesn't appreciate federal agents compromising his operations, Ortega stated, as if explaining something obvious, especially ones who get sloppy. Your employer? Dante asked cautiously. Not Kine? Ortega's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. Kiney? He's just the technician, useful but replaceable. He gestured toward the doctor with contempt. He thinks he's changing the world. Really, he's just making rich men richer. Who do you work for? Cassidy demanded. Someone who values talent and recognizes threats. Ortega's dead eyes fixed on Dante. Someone who sent me to evaluate whether the ghost should be eliminated or recruited. Understanding dawned on Dante. The bodies in the hotel room. That was you. You've been watching us from the beginning, protecting an investment, until I determined which side you'd choose. A crash from outside interrupted the tense standoff. FBI tactical teams had finally breached the main entrance. Shouts and footsteps echoed through the corridors. Ortega glanced toward the sound, then back at Dante and Cassidy. Time's up. My orders were clear. Clean up Rivera's mess, eliminate Kane if compromised, and make you an offer." "What offer?" Dante asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Join us. Your skills, Miss Reynolds' connections, combined with our resources, or die here, alongside the doctor." Ortega's expression remained impassive. "Choose quickly." Cassidy's reply was instantaneous. "Go to hell. I'm already there," Ortega responded without emotion. "Ghost?" Dante held Ortega's gaze. In another life, he might have considered such an offer. Power, protection, purpose of a sort. But that Dante had died in a hotel room days ago, when he'd chosen to cut a woman's chains rather than look the other way. "I'm not a ghost anymore," he said simply. "And you're not walking out of here?" Ortega nodded, as if he'd expected this answer. Pity. What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. Ortega moved with preternatural speed, drawing a second weapon from an ankle holster. Dante lunged forward, tackling Gabriella and Chen to the ground as bullets whizzed overhead. Cassidy returned fire from behind a gurney, forcing Ortega to seek cover behind the central control station. Kine, seeing his chance, scrambled for Rivera's fallen weapon. Cassidy spotted the movement and adjusted her aim, but Ortega emerged from cover at that exact moment, firing rapidly. She dove aside, bullets tearing into equipment where she'd stood seconds before. Dante rolled to his knees, firing at Ortega's position while shouting to Gabriella, "Get Chen and his daughter out, now!" Gabriella didn't hesitate. She helped William Chen disconnect the monitoring equipment from Lily, then supported the unconscious young woman as Chen lifted her from the gurney. They staggered toward the exit, keeping low. Ortega, seeing the escape attempt, shifted his fire toward them. Dante intercepted, emptying his magazine at the enforcer, forcing him back into cover. Cassidy used the distraction to advance, leapfrogging forward until she had a clear shot at Kine, who was struggling to reach Rivera's weapon with his injured arm. "Don't," she warned. Kine froze, then slowly raised his hands again. "You're making a terrible mistake," he said, his surgeon's composure cracking. "You have no idea who you're fighting against." "We'll find out," Cassidy replied, keeping him covered while scanning for Ortega's position. The enforcer had disappeared. "Dante," she called in warning, just as Ortega emerged from behind a supply cabinet, moving like a shadow with a combat knife now in his hand. Dante turned too late. The blade slashed across his arm, drawing a bright line of blood. He staggered back, dropping his empty weapon. Ortega pressed the advantage, knife flashing in precise deadly arcs. It was the fight Dante had avoided his entire career, close-quarters combat against a specialist. The ghost operated from distance, from shadow. This was Ortega's domain, and the enforcer's skill was evident in every lightning-fast thrust and slash. Cassidy couldn't get a clear shot with Dante and Ortega locked in their deadly dance. She held her position, covering Kine while looking for an opening. Dante fought defensively, using surgical trays and equipment as barriers between himself and Ortega's blade, but he was losing ground, bleeding from multiple shallow cuts, each designed to weaken without immediately killing. "You're good," Ortega acknowledged, advancing methodically. "But this is what I do." In desperation, Dante grabbed a container of surgical alcohol and hurled it at Ortega's face. The enforcer dodged easily, but the momentary distraction allowed Dante to seize a surgical tray and swing it like a shield. Metal instruments clattered across the floor. Among them was a scalpel. Dante snatched it up as Ortega closed in again, the small blade nearly invisible in his grip. The enforcer, focused on his combat knife, didn't register the new threat until it was too late. As he lunged forward for a killing strike, Dante sidestepped and drove the scalpel into Ortega's neck with surgical precision. The enforcer's eyes widened in surprise. His knife clattered to the floor as his hands went to his throat, blood pulsing between his fingers. He staggered, then collapsed, his legendary speed and skill rendered meaningless by a single, perfectly placed strike. Silence fell over the surgical suite, broken only by Dante's ragged breathing and the distant shouts of FBI tactical teams clearing the facility room by room. "You okay?" Cassidy asked, not taking her eyes or weapon off Kane. "I'll live," Dante replied, pressing a hand to his worst wound, a deep gash across his forearm. Kine looked between them, his clinical detachment finally giving way to fear. "What happens to me now?" "Justice," Cassidy answered simply. Agent Diaz burst through the door moments later, leading a tactical team with weapons raised. She took in the scene, Rivera and Ortega dead, Kine injured and under Cassidy's guard, Dante bleeding but standing. "Secure the suspect," she ordered, indicating Kane. And get medical teams down here immediately. We have multiple victims requiring emergency care. She approached Dante and Cassidy. You two have a lot of explaining to do. Later, Dante said, moving toward the exit. First, I need to find my sister and make sure Chen's daughter is safe. Diaz nodded reluctantly. The building is secure. We've already evacuated several victims to waiting ambulances. She glanced at Rivera's body. And you'll need to tell me exactly what happened here. The truth, Cassidy promised. All of it, including who Rivera was really working for. As they left the surgical suite, walking past FBI agents, securing evidence, and medical personnel attending to the victims, Dante and Cassidy exchanged a look that contained volumes. Relief, exhaustion, the beginning of something neither could yet name. The climax had passed. The immediate danger neutralized. But they both knew this was only the surface of something much deeper and more pervasive. Somewhere in the shadows, the true architect of this horror remained untouched, watching, perhaps already planning their next move. For now, though, they had done what they set out to do. They had saved lives, exposed a monster, chosen humanity over darkness. It would have to be enough. Boston General Hospital hummed with controlled chaos 2 days after the Warehouse 17 raid. An entire floor had been cordoned off for the survivors, with FBI agents posted at every entrance and medical staff with special security clearance attending to the victims. Dante sat in a plastic chair outside Lily Chen's room, his arm professionally bandaged, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. Across from him, William Chen paced the corridor, pausing occasionally to peer through the window at his daughter's sleeping form. The doctors say she'll make a full recovery, Chen said, his voice rough with emotion. No permanent damage. They didn't take anything from her yet. She was lucky, Dante replied. You both were. Not luck, Chen corrected, meeting Dante's eyes. You and Miss Reynolds. I don't know how to thank you. Dante shook his head slightly. Thank Cassidy. She's the one who never stopped looking. As if summoned by her name, Cassidy appeared at the end of the corridor, escorted by Agent Diaz. The two women spoke briefly before Diaz nodded and stepped away. Cassidy approached, her stride measured but weary. How's our patient? She asked, stopping beside Chen. Stable. Improving. His eyes shimmered with unshed tears. They're saying she might wake up tomorrow. Cassidy squeezed his shoulder gently. Good. She's strong, like her father. Chen excused himself to speak with the doctors, leaving Dante and Cassidy alone in the corridor. She took the seat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. How's your arm? She asked. Functional. Dante flexed his fingers to demonstrate. 42 stitches. Nothing compared to what those people in the warehouse endured. He studied her face. Any word on Gabriella? She's being debriefed by Diaz's team. They're treating her as a cooperating witness, not a suspect. Cassidy lowered her voice. Salvatore's house is secure again. The attack was repelled, but 3 of his men didn't make it. Dante absorbed this with a small nod. And Kaine? Federal custody. Maximum security medical wing until he recovers enough for transfer. Her expression hardened. He's talking, trying to make a deal. Claims he was just following orders, that he can deliver the real masterminds. Will they give him one? A deal? Possibly. Diaz says it depends on who he gives up and how valuable the information is. Cassidy's disgust was evident. His operation spanned at least 7 states and 3 countries. Over 200 victims identified so far, with more locations being uncovered daily. Silence settled between them, heavy with the weight of what they'd witnessed and what remained unresolved. After a moment, Dante spoke again. And what about us? What's our status with the FBI? Complicated. Cassidy rubbed her temples. Diaz wants to classify us as confidential informants retroactively. It gives her cover for using us in the operation, and prevents questions about why she didn't arrest you on sight. Generous of her. She's one of the good ones. Her career is on the line after Rivera's betrayal exposed corruption within the Bureau. Cassidy leaned back, her shoulder now touching his. They've frozen your assets and the Ricci family accounts pending investigation, but there's no active warrant for your arrest. Dante absorbed this information, weighing options and implications. Salvatore won't last much longer, he said finally. When he goes, whatever protection I have in Providence disappears. The family will fragment. Alliances will shift. I know. A doctor emerged from Lily's room, nodding to them respectfully before continuing down the corridor to where Chen waited. Through the window, they could see the young woman still sleeping, IV lines delivering fluids and medication, monitors tracking her vital signs. It was worth it, Dante said quietly. Whatever comes next. Cassidy followed his gaze to Lily, then back to his face. Yes, it was. Agent Diaz approached, her expression somber but not unfriendly. We need your formal statements, she announced. Both of you. Everything you know about Kaine's operation, Rivera's involvement, and this mysterious employer Ortega mentioned. We'll cooperate fully, Cassidy assured her. Good. Because this isn't over. Diaz handed them each a folder. The FBI director has authorized a special task force to continue the investigation. Off the books. Limited personnel. Maximum security clearance. We need to find who was really behind this. Dante opened his folder to find documentation for a new identity, complete with driver's license, passport, and credit cards. Cassidy's folder contained similar items. Witness security program? Dante asked, surprised. Not officially, Diaz replied. This is something more specialized. Limited knowledge, even within the Bureau. You'll be listed as security consultants attached to the task force. Why us? Cassidy questioned. Because you're already targets, Diaz said bluntly. Whoever Ortega worked for knows your faces, your names, your histories, and they know you've disrupted their operation. They'll come for you eventually. So we work with you instead of running, Dante concluded. Diaz nodded. Use your skills to help us take down the entire network. In return, we provide resources, protection, and legal immunity for past activities. She fixed Dante with a pointed look. Within reason. The offer hung between them, unexpected yet somehow inevitable. Cassidy glanced at Dante, a question in her eyes that needed no voicing. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. When do we start? Cassidy asked. You already have. Diaz gestured toward the exit. Cars waiting downstairs. We have a safe house prepared about an hour from here. Everything you need will be provided. As they gathered their few belongings and prepared to leave, William Chen returned to Lily's room. Through the window, they watched him take his daughter's hand, his shoulders finally relaxing as the immediate danger passed. Justice had been served partially, imperfectly, but enough to allow for healing to begin. The larger resolution remained elusive, a shadow on the horizon that would require continued vigilance and courage to confront. But for now, they had won. They had saved lives. They had chosen to stand against the darkness together, and somehow, against all odds, survived to fight another day. 3 months later, a small cottage overlooked the Atlantic from a rocky promontory in coastal Maine. Wind whistled through the pines surrounding the property, mingling with the constant rhythm of waves breaking against the shore below. Early morning light filtered through the windows, illuminating 2 figures at the kitchen table. Dante studied the documents spread before them. Surveillance photos, financial records, testimonies from former associates of Kaine's operation. His appearance had changed subtly, hair slightly longer, beard closely trimmed, the haunted look in his eyes replaced by something steadier, more purposeful. The money trail leads to shell companies in the Caymans, he noted, tracing a line on a complex diagram, then disappears into a network of cryptocurrency transactions. Across from him, Cassidy nodded, her own transformation evident in the confident set of her shoulders and the directness of her gaze. The trauma of being chained in that hotel room had not disappeared, but she had reclaimed herself not as a victim, but as a hunter. Diaz's team tracked 3 of the recipients, she replied, sliding another file toward him. All high-level clients who received specialized treatments through Kaine, a Saudi prince, a tech billionaire, and a former intelligence director, all alive because someone else died. Dante opened the file, examining the photographs. Potential leverage points, potentially, but they're protected, insulated by wealth and power. Cassidy poured more coffee for both of them. We need to aim higher. A soft chime from the secure laptop interrupted them. Cassidy opened the video call to reveal Agent Diaz, looking tired but determined. We've got movement, Diaz announced without preamble. Julian Kaine was found dead in his cell this morning, made to look like suicide. Dante and Cassidy exchanged glances. Not unexpected, but still significant. He was scheduled to testify before the grand jury next week, Diaz continued. Someone didn't want that to happen. Someone with access to a maximum security federal facility, Cassidy noted. That narrows the field, or widens it, depending on your perspective. Diaz's expression was grim. We've identified 3 additional surgical facilities: Atlanta, Phoenix, and Chicago. Raids are being coordinated as we speak. You need us on site? Dante asked. Diaz hesitated. Not yet. You're still too hot, too visible. But I need your analysis of the principals, especially potential protectors within federal law enforcement. After ending the call, they moved to the porch, mugs in hand, watching the ocean churn beneath a brightening sky. The safe house had become something more over these months, not quite a home, but a sanctuary of sorts. A place where they could breathe, plan, and occasionally forget the darkness they were fighting. You miss it? Cassidy asked unexpectedly. Providence? The family? Dante considered the question. I miss Gabriella. I miss certain routines. He took a sip of coffee. But Providence stopped being home the moment I walked into that hotel room. And found me, Cassidy completed softly. And found myself, Dante corrected. The man I could be if I made different choices. The admission hung between them, honest in a way neither had allowed themselves in their previous lives. 3 months of working together, living in close quarters, navigating the aftermath of trauma and revelation, had forged something neither had anticipated: trust that went beyond professional respect. I got a message from William Chen yesterday, Cassidy said after a moment. Lily started college classes again. Limited schedule, still recovering, but moving forward. Good, Dante nodded. That's good. He asked if we'd consider visiting. Said Lily wants to thank us in person. Maybe someday, when it's safer. They both knew safer might never come. Whoever had employed Mateo Ortega, whoever had protected Julian Kane and corrupted Marcus Rivera, remained in the shadows. Powerful enough to reach into federal custody and eliminate witnesses, patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike. I received word about Salvatore, Dante said quietly. He passed last night. Peaceful, in his sleep. Cassidy placed her hand over his. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was ready. Dante turned his hand to grasp hers. He knew what I'd chosen, approved in his way. The Don's final message had been simple. You found your line. Now hold it. Coming from a man who had spent his life pushing and redrawing moral boundaries, it was as close to a blessing as Dante could have hoped for. What happens to the Ricci family now? Cassidy asked. War, probably. Power struggles. Old alliances fracturing. Dante shrugged. But it's not my concern anymore. That life is finished. And this one? She gestured around them, the cottage, the ocean, the life they'd been building in the spaces between hunting monsters. Dante considered her question, feeling the weight of his past and the uncertainty of his future. The ghost had been laid to rest in Warehouse 17, but the man who remained was still finding his way. This one has purpose, he finally said. More than I ever had before. Cassidy's hand remained in his, warm and real. Worth walking into that hotel room. Worth everything that came after, he replied, meeting her eyes, including whatever comes next. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across their sanctuary, they sat together in comfortable silence. Two people transformed by choice and circumstance, by violence and rescue, by the lines they'd drawn and the ones they'd crossed. The world beyond their rocky promontory remained dangerous, filled with powerful people who profited from suffering. The conspiracy they'd begun to unravel stretched further and deeper than they'd initially imagined. Justice remained partial, resolution incomplete. But in this moment, watching waves crash against unyielding stone, they had found something unexpected, not just purpose, but possibility. A chance to be defined not by their pasts, but by the choices they made now, together. Transformation wasn't an endpoint but a process, ongoing and imperfect. Like the tide reshaping the shoreline, persistent and powerful in its quiet way. So, Cassidy said finally, ready to get back to work? Dante nodded, squeezing her hand once before releasing it. Always. The hunt continued. The darkness remained. But they faced it now, not as shadows themselves, but as something far more dangerous to those who preyed on the vulnerable. Witnesses, survivors, avengers,